I don't even know where to start on the Twitter thing. What bothers you the most? That Twitter and the Democrats lied about censorship, that the government was involved with Twitter and censorship, that Michelle Obama pressured Twitter to ban Trump, that the media is completely silent. New York Times, Washington Post, one story in the last week. There have been several updates that have happened.
And nothing on the Sunday shows except Fox.
How about the FBI and CDC using a back channel with Twitter? Or the internal documents that show only one Twitter employee was raising serious free speech concerns.
And identified as a junior staffer, by the way.
Okay, so there are three things here that they should lawyer up about. First, it looks like the material may have been intentionally hidden or destroyed despite inquiries from Congress. Remember, Congressman said, Twitter, don't destroy anything because we're coming for an investigation. So it looks like some of the evidence has been destroyed. That's not going to go well for people. Plus, they lied under oath over and over and over again. This is a free speech fight for the public, and most people are debating whether Twitter is bad or good. This is about the federal government being involved neck deep in censorship, to me.
I think so, too, because it's interesting. You read the back and forth. There is one employee. It's like, hey, guys, I don't know if we should ban a leader of the free world. Maybe this is a bad idea. There is one employee doing that. One. Legitimately one single employee, a junior level staffer.
In a Slack message.
It's a comical. There's nobody there going hey, guys, don't you see how this is going to be seen by half the country?
He says, this might be an unpopular opinion, but one-off ad hoc decisions like this that don't appear rooted in policy are, in my opinion, a slippery slope and reflect an alternatively equal dictatorial problem. He said, this now appears to be fiat by an online platform CEO with a global presence that can gatekeep speech for the entire world. That seems unsustainable.
It's a very nice way of saying the very obvious thing.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah. So it's interesting because, first of all, you mentioned the CEO. I don't know if Jack counts at that point because he went back and forth in that role. But I will say it does seem that Jack was out of these conversations often. It doesn't seem like he was the center pushing point for a lot of this stuff. And he was, in this one, he was on vacation phoning into meetings, they say. So we'll see how that plays out as we get more information. But he doesn't seem to be the center power, the gravity of all of this. He's not. He seems to be occasionally involved, but not necessarily involved in the day-to-day. This guy, Yoel Roth, is the guy who seems to be the guy who really is behind a lot of this, and they have a lot of his messages. What I find interesting, though, is you go through them, and there is a lot of conversation from Twitter employees saying things like, look, our policies don't allow us to do this. There's no justification for doing these things because
based
of our
on
policies.
Yes.
So how do we craft? You're supposed to stop there. You're not supposed to go to the so.
I know.
But they go on and they say, so how do we craft a path around the policies? How do we justify this through the policies?
So in other words, we all love the Constitution, but there are things we have to do.
Right. Sometimes there's things we have to do. And that seems to be the constant refrain in these messages. They all agreed, obviously, that Donald Trump was bad and that he needed to be removed immediately and conservatives were dangerous and all of this. But they didn't do a lot about that in this period as far as banning if they couldn't come up with a way to justify the policies. Around January 6th, that all seemed to change. They just abandoned this completely and just started blanket justifying things.
How they felt.
Because of how they felt. And how they felt is important because I think you could say it's how they felt because they felt Donald Trump was a danger to the country. That the right was a horrible group of people that were doing terrible things. And I think that's true. Like, I think that is part of this story. But the other thing they felt was massive pressure from federal government employees,
Michelle
Obama, major people in the press that are supposed to be neutral. All of the pressure came in. A lot of these people are friends. They felt massive outside pressure to come up with a way to justify this policy or not. And so they executed it. Does that mean that they are innocent here? No, not at all. I mean, it doesn't change how you should feel about Twitter. But it should, I think, put the focus of the American people and their attention span, which is limited, to the people in the federal government who are starting this pressure campaign, right? It's interesting that some executive at Twitter was liberal and looked for a way to ban Donald Trump or some other conservative. Sure, that's interesting. It's part of the story. But the fact that our government was getting involved, federal government and former government employees.
Oh, as late as last week, Elon Musk fired the guy who was involved in the Trump setup of the Russiagate. That FBI agent was still filtering and possibly deleting things, covering up the FBI's involvement in Twitter as late as last week.
And that's far more important, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's far more important that this stuff was going on outside. Because, look, they're going to have their defenses on whether they ban people or not, whether it fits policy or not. How big of a violation is that? Look, they could get punished, but it might not be that serious. The First Amendment specifically deals with federal government influence. I mean, it specifically means talking about laws, but it does have, I think, a direct line from federal government employees and former employees. Pressuring
to the White House. They said it.
Yeah, they said it. They bragged about it.
Yes, they bragged about it.
At the time, and the media was so on their side on this stuff that it never got any critical treatment.
Right. It shows CDC, FBI, White House, all of them steering and pushing the steerage of Twitter.
They had an online portal where you could say, hey, this tweet you should pull down, and Twitter would look at it. Now, is Twitter looking at that really? Are they making a coherent analysis of what this tweet is? Yeah, actually, this particular physician is from Stanford. He's well respected. He's a little out of the mainstream, maybe of consensus, but hey, he still has an important voice. Are they doing that? No.
But the federal experts say he's not.
So the pressure
is
making
more
a decision.
expert than the federal government's experts?
Right. The pressure is making the decision.
Correct.
There is no decision making.
Correct.
They're just adopting it. Now, of course, if Donald Trump's administration came to them and said the same thing, it would not be this way.
So let me take a break because I want to come back and I want to ask you, why the silence from mainstream media? This is an enormous story. This is proof positive that the government is colluding to lie to you and using Twitter to do it. Why the silence? How does the press think they will get away with this, and will they? When we come back, let me tell you what all of this means here in a second from a recovering alcoholic. But let me set it up first. The left, or the mainstream media, if you will, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, the networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they are not covering anything on the Twitter files, okay? In fact, the New York Times gave space to Elon Musk's critics talking about the rise of hate speech on the platform, but there's not a rise of hate speech on the platform. It's gone the opposite way. The Washington Post also reported that Musk was being investigated by San Francisco authorities for creating makeshift bedrooms at Twitter headquarters for employees to sleep in. So they're smearing him. Old News, The Atlantic, CBS, NBC, ABC, 0 minutes to the Twitter files. Zero. CNN's disinformation reporter, Ben Collins, his contribution was a tweet, a yawn emoji. Okay. So what is their strategy? This is an enormous story of collusion to usurp the Bill of Rights. This is illegal from so many different ways on the government side.
And they love this stuff. The media usually loves internal leaked documents describing, if nothing else, business strategy.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is the type of thing that they would write endless features and books about.
So why are they not?
They liked the result. I mean, that's the only thing I can come up with.
Okay.
And they like the continuing of this happening all over the media.
Do they think with the approval ratings they have, approval ratings now are about 7%, I think, for news organizations, how do they think they're going to survive?
It seems like I think they've learned a lesson over the last few years that if they ignore stuff, like the Hunter Biden laptop, it goes away. And even if it does eventually get covered multiple years later, you're past the point of impact. Right?
Okay. They learned that from Clinton and Lewinsky. The whole society is running on the Clinton-Lewinsky thing. It's not true. 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 Well, here are the documents. Doesn't matter.
It's old news.
It's old news. Okay. Here's a couple of things to think about. One, to me, this says their arrogance is even higher than we might have thought. And I hope that's not with some knowledge of, don't worry, we got them anyway. But somebody is saying, don't worry, it's not going to come to bite us in the butt. They're banking on that. So they no longer believe in justice in America. That's saying something. They believe they are beyond the reach of justice. When giant corporations believe there is no justice that they will have to answer to, you don't have anything anymore. You do not have a republic or even a democracy. You've got something entirely different that looks a lot like fascism. If you're in with the government, you will not pay a price. Second thing, for all of those journalists, the people who even work the presses, anybody who is working at these institutions, be very, very careful because it gets you one step at a time. You overlook something and say, it's no big deal. Then it's no big deal. And it's no big deal. As you dismiss things, it gets you closer and closer to embracing things. And I think this is the embrace moment. You are now embracing government dictating what can and cannot be said. That is a losing side, unless you want to live like China. So as you accept lie after lie after lie after lie, and they get bigger and bigger and eat into what you used to believe. You used to believe that people had a right to free speech. Apply this if it was being done by Donald Trump. Would you be for it? The answer is clearly no. Some of us are against it being used by either side. I'm one of them. Trump shouldn't do it, which he didn't. Trump shouldn't do it, nor should Biden or Obama or anybody else. George Washington shouldn't do it. Thomas Jefferson shouldn't do it. This is a universal principle in America. The more you stay silent, the more you just silently accept, you're not on the bench. You are actually on the field, and you're on the wrong side. And when the wake-up call comes, it may be too late for you to be able to change sides because your whole life will be built on lies. And as a recovering alcoholic, let me tell you something. When you base your whole life on lies, it is really hard to get out of it because you don't know if there's anything real to replace it with. You don't know how you can possibly get back. You can, but it's hard to believe that you can. Don't get trapped there. Get out of any kind of lies, even if they're lies of just being silent.